From every founders we've been talking to, every GTM team has this one common problem: the SDR-AE handoff is broken.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of cost associated. There's a hidden cost of this handoff, right?
Correct.
The SDR and AE handoff is like the most important piece in SaaS GTM, in GTM SaaS, right?
Tested all standard motions. We realized most of them are optimized for the wrong things, fundamentally meetings, and not for actual momentum.
Yeah.
Right. Most of the SDRs don't even know who they're calling when they're calling. Literally. Those days are gone where SDR is expected to do a lot more deeper research and have conversation dialed manually, using one of the dialers. The best case scenario about a year back was they used the power dialer. But today, every SDR does the parallel dialing.
There is a systemic issue in this. Marketing is chasing qualified leads. Hi, Shri. Good morning.
Morning, Ramesh.
How was weekend?
Weekend was very good.
What did you do? This time was it your son's question papers?
No. I think I just wanted to get back to my, little bit back to shape. So I was talking to people to get some suggestions on what I should do. Want to get some fitness.
Okay.
Back. So that's where I spend most of my.
You see this, right? Every weekend, Shri has a theme. Either it's his son's question paper, or he does. He tries and plays around with the LLM, or this weekend he has a pet project going on every week. How do you carve time for that?
I think this week was an important thing. I think last weekend I shared the numbers, so I think it needs some attention on the health. So I said, okay, go back. I was using the Whoop band and researching a little bit what I could find, what I couldn't. So LLM is part of that as well. But that's how I spent. But Ramesh,
Yeah. So with that, this is, as you may have noticed, Shri and Ramesh here. This is our little podcast, Outbound by Highperformr. And today we're talking about something interesting. But before that, Chennai got really lucky. This weekend we were in for massive cyclone Manta, as they call it. And it severed last minute. It moved away from the coast. So we ended up coming to office, and So
I think, Ramesh, do you know that the name is not Indian; it's a Thai.
It's Thai,
right? So it looks like there is a system or a process, for even naming it. Even before the next cyclone comes, the name is already available.
I hope they block domains.
I think we just kind of I would say narrow escape. It would have hit Chennai versus going to Andhra, but I'm sure it's going to sail safe. But it just got me thinking, Ramesh, right? So it's exactly like when I talk about the process of handover and all of that. It's exactly like the SDR-AE handover in most of the sales team. I think it's been.
Where did that come from? Is that something you've been thinking over the weekend?
It's been bothering our head, and we've been going through this multiple. At least we have spent 2-3 quarters now. You do all the prep. You basically build up the momentum, trying to figure out the best AE SDR combination. The deal still slips in because you get a lot of conversation. I remember, Ramesh, about 2 quarters back, we had a SDR AE setup. Of course, we were the A's back then.
Still are.
Yeah. So, but you had a full board with a lot of conversations, right? I think that's the disconnect, right?
I think interesting.
The reason I'm trying to bring the cyclone is that you just slip it after that. There's a lot of conversation happens on the so-called top of the funnel, but when the handover happens, we being the founders running it as an AE, you still realize that, hey, these are empty conversations, right? So I thought that's a good conversation to have. And
Interesting analogy here by Shri. So it's comparing the cyclone and you're preparing for it. The government is preparing for it. A lot of this, and then it slips to a different place, and you don't know if they are prepared for it on the other side, right?
Correct.
And the analogy, bringing it back to what we're doing at Highperformr, is our sales readiness, our SDR motion.
Correct.
I think it's a perfect analogy there, because a lot of times we've gone through the struggle, and we are going through this as we speak, as well as many other founders, in trying to get the GTM right. So product is as good as a distribution, and here for distribution we are looking at SDRs. We're looking at how can they crack sales, and there is a moment of handshake, right? So the SDR brings in, tries to get a lead. And then there's a handoff that happens to an AE, and many a times, or most often, there is the slip between the cup, the SDR, and the lip, the AE.
Okay.
There, right?
So in such a nice warm way. But Ramesh, I want to kind of go deeper today. I think we have learned a lot, at least learned quite a bit in the last 2 quarters. Why SDR-AE handoff is broken? I think we have spoken, we have debated,
Sure.
Ramesh, you and I, among, with a lot of coffee and all of that across, how it kills fundamentally the trust and the speed, very, very important.
Yeah.
And more importantly, what founders can do instead, right? From every founders we've been talking to, every sales teams we've been talking to, every GTM team has this one common problem: the SDR-AE handoff is broken.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of cost associated. There's a hidden cost of this handoff, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about the one of them. The SDR and AE handoff is like the most important piece in SaaS GTM, in GTM SaaS, right? So every playbook that you go across, right? It's when you're an outbound motion, even inbound these days have a lot of SDRs. Every playbook says you need it. Every playbook says this is the playbook that is scalable. And, it looks very beautiful in a CRM when you say this has been the source, this is the SDR connect, and it's been handed over to AE. But let me also tell you that we've seen it firsthand at Highperformr. This destroys momentum.
Significantly.
Right? And when I say that, I don't mean it to sugarcoat it anyways, because the momentum is broken with every handoff that happens from SDR, right?
Correct. No, I think, Ramesh, very, very important point, right? We have seen this very close, right? Specifically the momentum part, right? Day in, day out. I mean, in fact, last few months, I think we can be very candid here, right? We have worked with 10 to 15 SDRs, or 10 to 12 specifically, right? Tested all standard motions, right? We realized most of them are optimized for the wrong things.
Yeah.
Fundamentally meetings.
Correct.
Right? And not for actual momentum.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to kind of double click that and want to understand,
sure,
what is happening there? Why meetings why all SDR sales teams are obsessed about having SDRs do a lot of meetings?
See, the SDR is primarily tasked with one goal: get a meeting.
Okay.
Right. And I'll come to the different parts of the SDR in a while. But when an SDR books a meeting, they have built the trust. They have built the context.
Correct.
They've talked about what we do. They may not even, by startups, you don't even have a brand. So you have to be the SDRs do a darn good job of telling them what the product is.
Correct.
And then they spike some kind of interest to say, okay, let's go in for a meeting. And then when the AE comes, it starts from all over again.
Correct.
And the AE gets another just about 30 minutes to have the first meeting, and it starts all over again. And imagine this other side where the prospect is thinking, are these guys even talking to each other? Hey, you've said something. The AE is probably asking the same questions. Hey, which tool do you use, right? What is your CRM?
Correct.
So that is very annoying. And we've seen this time and again at Highperformr.
So, Ramesh, let's just go a little deeper, right? Of course, context, larger setups, larger companies with, let's say, 25 SDRs and, let's say, 10 AEs or whatever is the combination. People try 100 different ways of running it. I agree. The context is the number one problem there.
Correct.
But in a setup like startup like ours, where
it's worse,
we are day out involved in what's happening on the SDR motion. But even then, right, things are disconnected. Correct. Because the meetings, I've seen, where we've gone into meetings at late night, 1:30 a.m., 2 a.m. meetings where whole context is available for us to kind of, because you have, the co-founder, pretty much end to end, but still the meeting doesn't, carry the momentum. So what is the problem there? What is the core problem, which I would say 9 out of 10, the startups go through?
Right? I think I'll start with the SDR's understanding of their metric.
Correct.
The SDR is often tasked with saying, hey, can you get me as many qualified meetings?
Okay.
So what's not understood is the definition of qualified and what should a meeting end up with.
Okay.
And that's the hardest part, right? If you take the ramp of an SDR, I would be honest in saying this.
Okay.
It's not 3 months.
It's not 3 months.
The SaaS defines a ramp of an SDR as 3 months. I would say it's 6 months, fortunately, unfortunately, right?
So even when you hire somebody who's been in SaaS?
Oh, absolutely. Because it takes context. It's worse off when you have someone super experienced come in because they come up with their understanding and their way of doing it.
Okay.
Versus, you get an enterprise SaaS SDR, the cycle of just getting the meeting is in months. Whereas you want momentum,
Okay.
you want as many meetings as you go.
Okay.
So you have a different measure of that, right? So, but the mental understanding of what that meeting should contain is different. So, just to answer that.
Okay.
So here in this case, there's a big crack in that understanding of what a qualification means and what the meeting should look like, right? Most often the SDR always says, "Hey, book the meeting." He probably hits the gong, but
Okay.
it's about a friendly chat. Hey, with probably even the wrong persona.
Okay. Okay.
It's still a chat, which is good. It's a touch point, but it's never ever going close to getting the context and even the decision making.
But
right?
even more, Ramesh, in the recent, I mean, in fact, Ramesh and I have been at least we've spoken to at least 150 to 200 SDRs across different companies across India, even in a few other regions, right? One another common practice is that they all use a parallel dialer of late.
Correct.
Most of the SDRs don't even know who they're calling when they're calling. Literally, those days are gone where SDR is expected to do a lot more deeper research, and have conversation dialed manually, using one of the dialers. The best case scenario about a year back was they used, the power dialer. But today, every SDR does the parallel dialing.
Parallel dialing, yeah.
They don't even know who they're going to, actually speak to. The context is so less, right? They have a friendly chat. They believe that, hey, they're having so many number of conversations on the call. It's a 5% connect rate. You put the math, you'll get at least 1 or 2, meetings happening. What happens after that? Most of the SDR measures success is just by saying that I booked the meeting.
I think there's also a cause, right? And we create this cause tree.
Okay.
But that doesn't give them any license to say this is a qualified meeting. But because what we also institute at Highperformr is the SDR is responsible to get meetings with the pre-zero contact. And in our terms, it means the contact who may not necessarily be the decision maker, but the contact who's associated in that business and could have an influencing ability. Now, when you have an SDR booking a meeting with a P0, they're happy because they booked a meeting.
Correct.
But this person on the other side doesn't have any decision-making powers.
Correct.
So what's the use of the meeting? But it's a catch-22 situation, because it doesn't also mean that you can always get the meeting only with the decision maker.
Okay.
Right.
But Ramesh, if you say so, right, because then it's not because of SDR, because SDR is not trying to be lazy here, or I think it's basically structural. I would put it that way, right? The incentives are misaligned.
Yeah.
They are paid for volume and not for
velocity.
Velocity.
In fact, let's put it as
correct. Velocity in which they progress. When I say velocity, I mean, they have been incentivized for the number of meetings, right? Not for the velocity in which they make progress towards the deal closure, right? So the other most important thing, Ramesh, before you chime in, right? The other reason which I think is also happened in the last, I would say, we have seen this practice last 2 to 4 years, where SDRs are now under marketing. I don't, within an org, if it's marketing, and you know what happens.
I think there are different reasons to that. First, I'm at a startup where we are in. I'm not in a position to comment if that's the best for growth. But there is a systemic issue in this. Marketing is chasing qualified leads, right? And so marketing is running these programs of email marketing, of maybe LinkedIn automation, outreach, and so on. Whatever. And it just makes perfect sense when you say that all of this communication is going through an SDR's email ID or handle. The SDR needs to be a part of that.
Correct.
And I go back to our first point, how we started, which is the handoff over there, right? So marketing teams are trying to optimize for the MQLs, for the top of the funnel in some sense, but sales doesn't care about it. Sales is about revenue. Hey, where's my deal, right? So they are measured on deal. So there is a systemic gap in the measurement in itself, right? You're rewarding SDRs for a meeting, which is not even a leading indicator, right? It's not even a lagging indicator, right? They are incentivized for meetings for, you don't know if they're even if that company, that account is going to close. And I think that's a systemic issue that we have seen, and we have tried to correct that here at Highperformr. So what we do is, the SDRs are not responsible for just getting a meeting. They are responsible. They're not incentivized. you have to go across, because we have the ability to also find out the the structure of the organization. We have the ability to find out who their manager is and who are the decision maker. We kind of map that across. The tool maps it across, and the SDRs actually have to go through all of them until you call that a qualified meeting before it comes to Sri or me, who are the AEs in this case.
Okay. So, Ramesh, what it sounds like, it sounds like a storm that never makes, the landfall. So there are so much of activity. Because there's so much of activity around. I mean, I can see the last couple of weeks, weekend as well. I mean, there's so much of activity, right? But there's no impact. So what you're generating intent, but there's nobody to basically catch it. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's where there is this gap where the trust is completely dies.
Correct.
And you're doing injustice for both for yourself and the team and the buyer, because you're not wasting their time as well.
So we decided, to fix this, because we saw this grind for about like little more than a quarter, or of course almost close to 2 quarters. We decided to fix it, right? We spoke to multiple of SDRs during the hiring process, a lot of thought leaders. There is a systemic problem. That's what we realized, right? And they also operate from a pre-intent space as well. That's another realization. A lot of what was done by an SDR manually is completely been automated today, right?
Correct.
The amount of work done, irrespective of research and all of that, is like completely outsourced today, either to an AA agent or somebody else is doing it. That's what is happening. So which means that expectation from an SDR also has to change. I mean, the most important thing is that every SDR's goal was basically uncovered, was meetings. And we just wanted to basically focus on the real power, real thing. It is not about filling meetings in the calendar of AEs.
That's the worst. If you guys are doing this to say that is momentum, please stop that right now. We've seen significant change once we've changed this.
Correct. Ramesh, if you remember about this happened to us, right? I mean, the reason why we are bringing this as an important topic is this happened to us. We were so busy. In fact, about a quarter back, we were so busy. Our calendar was back to back. In fact, Ramesh and I had to take meetings at 2 a.m. In fact, we even skipped our travel, all of that. At one point of time, we had 3 to 4 meetings for each of us every day, right? But it was just gas.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you tell me what changed.
I think we didn't celebrate meetings. We started celebrating qualified meetings where we said, hey, who's coming in for the meeting? So the moment they said, hey, he's the decision maker and he or she is the decision maker, and there is also that we have to demo the product.
Okay.
So that's a big change. So the job of the SDR gets even more meaty because they're just not having one conversation inside a company. They're having many conversations with the right stakeholders before it comes onto the table, which and I get invited into the meeting.
Okay.
Right? And in this case, the AE. So that's a big change.
So I think just to be clear, Ramesh, what you're saying is that instead of measuring one meeting for an account, let's say there's an account you want to go after and you basically have given it, either it could be an account, a named account, or it comes from one of the inbound triggers or whatever, or they visited a website or whatever. Now, what you're saying is that the SDR's responsibility is not to just do just book one meeting and hand it over. Instead, what you're saying is that ensure that account, you get as many meetings as possible within the account, but ensure that you get to the stage where you can have a conversation about product and demo and use cases.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Right. And only then it makes the handoff in that sense is very clear, because the SDR now speaks to multiple stakeholders in the company. The story is consistent. What they talk to the decision maker is way more consistent. Right.
Okay.
And we also stand an opportunity because we're going to talk about the same thing again. So the gap is narrowed. There is no need for introduction to say, hey, I am Highperformr, this is what we do, because that's already spoken about at least 3 to 4 times in the organization. Right? So that's a big change that we've done. And what we've also done is SDRs are trained much harder to go deeper, right? Okay. Which means it's just not, hey, this conversation happened or on a cold call and I got a meeting fixed.
Correct.
Like you said, there's a big problem in a parallel dialer. You don't know, right? So that's just an entry point. That's just a foot in the door. It doesn't mean that the meeting is fixed. So if a meeting is fixed, well and good. You got to ensure that you multi-thread within that organization and get more people. So that's a big change. As easy as it sounds, as commonsensical does it sound, it's not as easy to implement it in an SDR world, because they are generally junior folks, and they don't understand the whole idea of buying committee. So we've actually instituted triggers. Hey, what's the trigger? Have they visited a website? Have they been on your calling list? Have you spoken to them at least thrice? Is there any other company who has come and logged in or signed up in our website? Just because they signed up, it doesn't mean that they're ready to buy. So that's a good trigger for them to go back to them and saying, hey, you've performed an activity, and let's have a conversation where I can make it a little easy for you. It's still not anywhere close to buying.
So in that case, we made two changes, right? One, like Ramesh said, we basically changed the expectation, right? What was expected of an SDR is not just a meeting; it's about a qualified conversation.
Yes,
that's one of the most important change we did. Second thing, we went back and looked at fundamentals, right? There's no point in giving an account list and then have them call, right? And the volume of calling and all of that really doesn't matter when there is absolutely no intent whatsoever. You know, what may not be the reason. But so what we did was that we stopped giving these named accounts. Instead, like Ramesh said, we started tracking different signals. People who have changed jobs in our specific ICP, people who have visited our website, people who have been engaging with our competitors, things like that, right? Where there is a reason, for us to call them, and then the SDR call to have a conversation. And more importantly, Ramesh, there's a small change, right? Where the SDR takes it a little further, right? They don't only talk about, the handoff. They also, kind of have the conversation going in. But the AE comes in, like people like us, who've been AEs in case of, case of a startup. We come in as a product consultant. We don't sell. Right? That that small overlap and the change in the way we operate
has made a huge difference.
Huge change, right? The SDR still remains as the person having the conversation, building the relationship. I mean, that is where the real thing changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big change that we did. And, let's talk about, so what does an SDR is measured upon today? Right? I think that's where it all culminates to. If it's not meetings, we've spoken about everything else, which could seem a little qualitative, but let's also talk about what does it mean for the SDR. So
Ramesh, I think the way the SDR, slowly we want to make the SDRs become like a mini closers, right? So they don't chase every account. They go deep with the right ones. That's a very important thing. But of course, you can ask me, like, how do you go do them? That's where you use product like Highperformr to understand the real account, people who with intent, and the people who really matter. Understand your champion versus the decision maker, things like that. You go through your regular, the qualification of band and all of that. But the most important thing is that in our mindset, we should treat SDRs also to kind of graduate from people who just book meetings to people who can have sensible conversations. Very, very important, right? And that's the most important change, right? But that can happen, of course, Ramesh, only when you have an orchestration layer behind you to identify these intent signals, rather than we also have to change by just not to throw the accounts at them. Hey, go after these accounts who basically we think you should go sell. That doesn't fly anymore.
Let me tell you the evolution of this as well, why we've come to this. And for all founders, please feel free to ask us more questions and even comment on us if you think we're wrong. The whole idea of SDRs was initially trying to give them, we gave them a parallel dialer. And we just said, hey, go find out your own leads and start dialing. That was the rawest form of it. That ran for about a quarter or so, and we lost a few SDRs in the meanwhile because we weren't getting meetings, and that's pretty natural. From there, we graduated saying, hey, let's let them not fish in the sea. Can we give them a smaller pond or even a bucket? And we said, let's just give them accounts. So we found the accounts. Each of them had an account book with over 500 contacts to call. And we said, hey, now they're working in a restricted environment of calling just these accounts, and the probability of success is better. What happened? We got meetings. We got meetings with all the context being repetitive, and the SDRs were happy because they were getting in meetings, but the company was unhappy because we didn't close as much as we wanted to. And the third iteration is when the GTM engineer plays a very critical role in orchestrating this entire piece of an external layer. It could be, Google Ads, or it could be LinkedIn or anyone else. Finding a trigger passing them on to Highperformr. Inside Highperformr, you're able to enrich, you're able to get a lot more. You know what emails to send them. That is again routed to an email marketing tool. So this entire orchestration is done before there is a context, and then that's given to an SDR. Right? Now this needs volume, but with a tool like Highperformr, you're able to cater to that volume. Yes. And then the SDR calls creates that opportunity not once, twice, thrice, until the time we are able to get the confidence of the prospect on the other side to say, hey, I love this, let's have a demo.
Correct.
Only then does it make sense for an AE or a solutions engineer or a pre-sales to step into that. And to think about it, it's not to penalize the SDR, it's for them to be more successful inside an account. They will have the ownership to say, let's try and close this account having gone so far, rather than leave it to the AE to say, go and multi-thread.
Interesting. Ramesh, which means, see, when we hire, that's been our learning as well, hire SDR who are ambitious, to just go beyond just booking meetings and wanted to see the closure as part of their job. That's very, very important.
Yeah, it's a mind shift change.
Yeah, people, the folks who've been reasonably successful with us in the last 2 quarters are the folks who are a little bit more ambitious. That is one. Another big change, is that the AE should basically also, the role of AE also is evolved. So we now treat the AEs, as product consultants, right? They step in if there is a clear interest, right? If there is no interest, we just repeat the discovery. It goes back to the SDR. They kind of own that portion where they get clarity on what problem, what pain point, how do you think we can solve. When the customer is ready, when the prospect is ready, only then the AE shows up.
Absolutely, right? And that's a big change, right? The SDR does the discovery, the product consultant or solution engineer, whoever you call, they drive the depth, they understand each and every part of it. But even before that, the SDR kind of understands the product and is able to do a quick demo, which doesn't entail the details of integrations, but it definitely shows them to say, hey, wow, I'm interested.
Correct.
Right? Because that, wow, I'm interested is such a critical yes, I do in some sense. Correct. That, you have to repeat that, and only then the SDR also gets context about the account that you're in. And then when you run both of them in sync, the buyer also feels like there is zero friction, because you're not introducing the product again, you're not introducing the narrative again. It gets dives straight into the product, and that there is a frictionless handover between an SDR and AE.
So Ramesh, this is possible, like with, of course, an approach to solve for it, because we had no choice, but we have to figure this out because we decided that we're going to go outbound and solve for this. So we need to iterate. This is our 3rd iteration where we are seeing results, and this is what changing. But the backbone is, there are 2 parts here. One is, of course, you should have a CRM, no doubt about it. That's your system of record.
Yeah.
If you run only with that, the conventional way of running is the only option for you. But the moment you put in an AI, you bring a system of intelligence, right? Now what happens is that you're trying to keep all of these things run continuously, right? There's enrichment, there is nodes. The SDRs in our teams don't spend time on finding phone and email.
Oh, they don't
at all. Yeah. They only call emails and phone when they're available.
Nor do they even, have to go to GPT to get emails.
Absolutely. Not, any other tool, right? For the matter of fact, to get the emails or phone number, all of them is completely automated. We qualify the account, we qualify the person, we qualify the intent, add nodes, sync it to the CRM. So the context flows naturally across SDR. So which means that we also given back SDRs 20-30% of the time, which they're spending time on manually scouting for people, scouting for, email and phone, all of that. And then the context flows smoothly between the SDR, AEs, or the consultants, or whoever is getting involved. That's also one of the key reasons why we are seeing result.
That's good. It's working so far, so well good right now.
But, right, Ramesh, that's the change. See, this is a change which is going to happen, because otherwise what happens, what we have seen is that SDRs take the accounts, go to ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity, do some research, spend few hours of their time when they should be reaching out, the time when they should be prospecting is gone on in a cycle, in a loop, where they become unproductive.
I think that's a chat for another day, and would love to cover that. How do you get the productivity of these SDRs in terms of the activities, meaningful activities being done, to chase a more meaningful metric of a qualified account rather than that. But let's get to what we've spoken about. I think as we come towards the end of this part. So Sri, if you're running a sales, I know we run it together, but if you're running a sales team right now, what would you be asking the SDRs to think?
So I would definitely ask this question: Are you an SDR booking meetings, or the one who's actually starting a deal? Right? That's the question I'll ask them.
Starting a deal.
And
that's very important. Right?
And that's the change I think I would ask. That is what I think will work in the future. I don't know how long, but that's a change.
I think internally also we need to ask the AEs of, hey, are you rediscovering into the account?
Okay.
Or are you actually, and it's as important, right? Are you continuing from where the SDR left it? That's important for the SDR too.
Yeah, I think the shift in the mindset is, Ramesh, we should train the SDRs to go deeper.
Yeah.
Right? That is number one change.
Oh, yes.
Right.
This takes time.
This
folks.
takes time.
This takes 3 months, 4 months, right? It doesn't mean there is lean time for the SDRs. You start looking at them from day zero.
Yeah, and of course, redefine AEs, right? Look at them as a product consultant. Right, they have to be, really, truly have to be product depth and all of that. Of course, the most important piece is to basically bring AI, build a system of intelligence around your GTM tools. Don't keep it siloed. Don't let the sales team. In fact, we had teams where we have been hiring people. We've heard, like companies who have their SDRs and AEs go visit the website tracking tools and find out people if they came to the website and then call them. All of that has to change. Bring system of intelligence which is automated. Make sure that you're running all of them in a cohesive way, and remove the manual work from these.
I think
roles.
What that has really done, and obviously I say this with my collar up, is Highperformr doesn't sell for you. Highperformr is not replacing the CRM, but what Highperformr really brings to the table is it helps gain that momentum. SDRs don't waste time trying to reach out or do this research, right? None of those, and that's very critical in their ramp towards starting a deal.
Correct. Very true. I mean, that's pretty much what we had. I mean, that's what we thought we wanted to share. But in the meantime, if you have your thoughts, if you want to share something which has worked for you in the last 2 quarters, last month, please let us know. Add us a comment. Happy to talk about it as well. But
absolutely. Until next time, stay curious, stay fast, and keep closing deals. Thank you. See you around.
Bye.